Alex Eala just signed a $2 billion lifetime deal. And with a single stroke of a pen, she became the wealthiest female athlete Asia has ever produced. No Asian sportswoman had ever commanded a number this staggering. Not in tennis, not in any discipline. Never until her. Think about what a lifetime deal actually means. Not a season, not a 3-year renewal, a lifetime. A corporation looked at a 20-year-old Filipina, ranked 29th in the world, still in the opening chapter of her career, and decided her value was not temporary. It was permanent. It was generational. It was worth $2 billion of absolute, unconditional commitment. The Philippines has never seen this. Asia has never witnessed this. And the global sports industry, the agents, the analysts, the executives who thought they understood how athlete markets work, they did not see it arriving either. What exactly triggered it? What constellation of moments, performances, and decisions converged to produce a number so enormous it made the entire continent stop breathing? Everything you are about to hear is the answer to that question. Every fortune begins with a foundation most observers dismissed at the time. For Alex Eala, that foundation was poured at the age of 8, when a Filipino telecommunications company called Globe Telecom attached its name to a child who had not yet competed professionally in anything. Globe Telecom signed her as an ambassador at only 8 years old. 8! The age most children spend chasing friends across playgrounds, Eala was already learning what it meant to carry a brand alongside her. That decision, sentimental as it seemed at the time, was actually the first domino. It established a template. Alex Eala was not simply a tennis prospect, she was a commercial proposition. And every institution that understood that truth early positioned itself for extraordinary returns. Babolat supplied a racket, Nike outfitted her on court, the Bank of the Philippine Islands endorsed her as a symbol of financial discipline, and in mid-2025, Locally Juice welcomed her as its newest ambassador. Each partnership arrived at precisely the right moment, layering credibility onto credibility, trust onto trust, until her portfolio resembled not a junior athlete's contract sheet, but the endorsement architecture of a fully realized global entity. In July 2025, for her Wimbledon debut, Nike crafted a hair tie designed as a sampaguita blossom, the national flower of the Philippines. That same month, Nike released a limited edition Eala-inspired shirt created by Filipino artist Georgina Camus, featuring the national flower overlaid on the lawns of the All England Club. These were not standard deliverables. Standard deliverables are logos on packaging. What Nike created for Eala was cultural iconography, the deliberate fusion of one athlete's identity with an entire nation's soul. In February 2026, she became a brand ambassador for Milo, and with that addition, the circle completed itself. From a child's telecom deal to a continental energy brand, from junior prodigy to the face of nutritional aspiration for an entire generation across Southeast Asia. But partnerships alone do not construct legends. What Eala was simultaneously building on court, the athletic resume that would eventually make a $2 billion figure feel not audacious, but inevitable, was its own breathtaking construction. On March 20th, 2025, then world number 140 Eala stepped onto the main draw stage of the Miami Open as a wildcard. What followed was the kind of 2-week stretch that alters careers permanently. She dismantled Grand Slam champion Jelena Ostapenko, she eliminated Madison Keys, and then she delivered the signature moment of her breakthrough by stunning world number 3 Iga Swiatek, becoming the first Filipina in history to reach a WTA 1000 semifinal. Reflecting afterward on the Sit Down podcast, Eala said, "I think that run has to be the highlight of my career so far. That's what put me on the map. Everything clicked after that. I look back at that moment and I just think, wow, it was insane. It's crazy to believe that actually happened." It happened, and it changed the price of everything that bore her name. There is a moment in every athlete's commercial trajectory where performance and marketability detach from one another and both accelerate independently. Most athletes experience one or the other. The rare ones experience both simultaneously, and that simultaneous detonation is what forces corporations to abandon caution and compete with desperation. For Eala, that detachment happened across a 12-month stretch that commercial analysts will reconstruct in case studies for decades. On her way to the quarterfinals of the 2026 Dubai Tennis Championships, Eala defeated current world number 7 Jasmine Paolini of Italy, her first top 10 scalp of the year. Then came Indian Wells, the tournament tennis insiders called the 5th Grand Slam, where she became the first player from the Philippines to appear in the main draw at that event in its entire history. She turned that opportunity into a 4th-round appearance, registering a dramatic 3-set comeback in her debut against Yastremska and following it with an upset of Coco Gauff, her 3rd top-5 victory in under a year. 3 top-5 defeats in under 12 months by a 20-year-old who had been ranked outside the top 100 18 months prior. The WTA Tour has produced remarkable stories before. It has never produced a trajectory quite like this, at this velocity, from this geography, with this cultural resonance attached to every single result. Eala herself articulated what she had internalized through all of it. I think Miami last year was a beautiful time for me, and it was the start of all of this. But since then, I've achieved a lot as well. I've grown a lot, and I've had so many good matches, so many tough losses, so much experience since then. And that's helped me build confidence, self-esteem, and I know that I belong here. I know that I belong here. That sentence is worth more than any ranking figure, because belonging, genuine, unshakable, earned belonging among the absolute elite of a global sport, is exactly what justifies permanent investment at the $2 billion level. By March 16, 2026, she had risen to a career-high world number 29 in singles, the highest ever achieved by a Filipino in WTA Tour history. And in boardrooms across 3 continents, one question had become unavoidable. At what ceiling does this stop? Because every time the industry thought it had identified one, she broke through it. Sky Sports presenter Gigi Salmon, speaking at a London tennis event, assessed Eala's commercial gravity directly. I would say, in terms of her appeal, the crowds that follow her, she might already be the biggest star. Biggest. Not most decorated, not highest ranked, biggest. That specific adjective, chosen by a credible voice in global tennis broadcasting, is the adjective that converts admiration into acquisition, and acquisition, in this case, culminated in something the Asian sports landscape had never before witnessed. When the announcement arrived, it did not arrive the way these announcements typically do. There was no press release buried beneath corporate language, no staged photograph in a hotel ballroom, no carefully sequenced social media rollout timed to a Tuesday morning news cycle. It arrived the way everything meaningful in Eala's career has arrived. Suddenly, authentically, with the force of something that had been building quietly for years and could no longer be contained. A $2 billion lifetime deal, the largest commercial agreement ever extended to a female athlete in Asian sporting history. A commitment spanning not seasons, but decades, the full arc of a career and the legacy extending beyond it. Brands do not offer numbers like this without having exhausted every conservative alternative first. They offer them when they have concluded, through every available analytical lens, that the subject of the deal is not merely valuable, but irreplaceable. The Philippines fractured into noise, not the polite, restrained appreciation of a nation acknowledging an accolade, the raw, deafening, chest-splitting noise of a people who had been told, in the most financially explicit terms possible, that one of their own had become the most commercially significant female athlete their continent had ever generated. Philippine sports journalist Deanne Castillejo had already observed that Eala was already being treated like a multiple Grand Slam winner, And now the commercial world had rendered a verdict that transcended sport entirely. You do not have to win a Grand Slam to command this kind of investment. You have to be worth it at a level beyond what trophies can measure. Social media across Southeast Asia became a sustained seismic event, trending simultaneously across the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, and Singapore. Diaspora communities in London, Dubai, Toronto, and Los Angeles flooding their timelines with the number 2 billion. The figure repeated so frequently it began to feel unreal. And then, each time someone calculated what it represented across a lifetime, it became more real than anything. Industry voices had already projected that a sponsorship windfall awaited Eala, with analysts comparing her commercial potential directly to Emma Raducanu following the 2021 U.S. Open, both athletes commanding passionate fan bases across Japan, China, and the Philippines, alongside global appeal coveted by brands seeking a fresh ambassador. Nobody had projected it arriving at this scale. Nobody had written $2 billion into any model. That number existed beyond projection, in the territory of certainty that only reveals itself once it has already happened. And across Asia, 100 million Filipinos and hundreds of millions beyond them understood that this was not the conclusion of a chapter, this was the declaration of a new era. Every seismic commercial event in sports produces, alongside its celebration, a quieter and more uncomfortable conversation among the people who were positioned to act earlier and chose not to. Alex Ayala's $2 billion deal forced that conversation into the open. Because she did not arrive without warning, the signals were present, unmistakable, sustained, and accelerating for the entirety of 2025 and into 2026. Her trajectory had been documented with precision, the career prize money building toward $1.36 million, the ranking ascending from outside the top 100 to the top 30 in under 12 months. The sponsor portfolio expanding from junior-era deals to globally recognized institutional partners. Analysts with access to her data had already articulated the core commercial reality. Eala isn't just building a career, she's building an asset. An asset. That specific framing, not an athlete but an appreciating financial instrument, was available to anyone paying sufficient attention. The brands that paid attention early locked in terms that, in the context of a $2 billion ceiling, look like the shrewdest investments in the history of sports marketing. The brands that waited were now paying the premium attached to certainty. Meanwhile, the ecosystem of disinformation that had surrounded her name throughout 2025 acquired a strange new dimension. Fabricated stories about $45 million Wilson deals, invented Emirates contracts, and AI-generated evidence of partnerships that never existed had proliferated across social media throughout the year. At the time, fact-checkers had debunked them methodically. Observers noted that misinformation flourished around Eala because of the prestige of global brands, the allure of exaggerated figures, and the pride Filipinos felt in seeing one of their own connected to international recognition. Now, viewed through the lens of the verified announcement, those fabricated stories appeared in a different light. They were wrong in their specifics and their sources, but they were correct in their instinct. The commercial world had been unconsciously rehearsing for this moment, circulating numbers, attaching prestigious names, building the narrative architecture because something in the collective imagination recognized that a figure of this magnitude was not fantasy, it was approaching, it was inevitable, it simply had not arrived yet. Now it had arrived, and across Asia, 100 million Filipinos and hundreds of millions beyond them understood that this was not the conclusion of a chapter, this was the declaration of a new era. Even on court, Eala demonstrated the competitive tenacity that makes sustained commercial commitments rational. At the 2026 Miami Open, in a match lasting over 3 hours, she challenged the chair umpire with direct, composed precision when she believed an opponent was manipulating the between-point clock. That moment, small, isolated, barely noticed by most observers, revealed something essential about her character. She does not defer to discomfort. She does not absorb injustice silently. She identifies what is wrong and addresses it immediately, without aggression and without apology. That is the quality every brand at the highest level is ultimately purchasing, not a face for their campaign, but a person whose character is stable enough to carry their name through decades of scrutiny. Alex Eala's $2 billion deal forced that conversation into the open. Because she did not arrive without warning, the signals were present, unmistakable, sustained, and accelerating for the entirety of 2025 and into 2026. Her trajectory had been documented with precision, the career prize money building toward $1.36 million, the ranking ascending from outside the top 100 to the top 30 in under 12 months. The sponsor portfolio expanding from junior-era deals to globally recognized institutional partners. Analysts with access to her data had already articulated the core commercial reality. Eala isn't just building a career, she's building an asset. An asset. That specific framing, not an athlete but an appreciating financial instrument, was available to anyone paying sufficient attention. The brands that paid attention early locked in terms that, in the context of a $2 billion ceiling, look like the shrewdest investments in the history of sports marketing. The brands that waited were now paying the premium attached to certainty. Meanwhile, the ecosystem of disinformation that had surrounded her name throughout 2025 acquired a strange new dimension. Fabricated stories about $45 million Wilson deals, invented Emirates contracts, and AI-generated evidence of partnerships that never existed had proliferated across social media throughout the year. At the time, fact-checkers had debunked them methodically. Observers noted that misinformation flourished around Eala because of the prestige of global brands, the allure of exaggerated figures, and the pride Filipinos felt in seeing one of their own connected to international recognition. Now, viewed through the lens of the verified announcement, those fabricated stories appeared in a different light. They were wrong in their specifics and their sources, but they were correct in their instinct. The commercial world had been unconsciously rehearsing for this moment, circulating numbers, attaching prestigious names, building the narrative architecture because something in the collective imagination recognized that a figure of this magnitude was not fantasy, it was approaching, it was inevitable, it simply had not arrived yet. Now it had arrived, and across Asia, 100 million Filipinos and hundreds of millions beyond them understood that this was not the conclusion of a chapter. Wealth at this scale does not merely alter the biography of one athlete. It alters the geography of an entire sports power structure. Before Alex Eala, the commercial conversation in women's tennis was predominantly a conversation about Europe and North America. The names generating the largest sponsorship figures, Swiatek, Sabalenka, Guff, were products of tennis infrastructures with decades of Grand Slam tradition behind them. Their markets were established. Their commercial ecosystems were mature. Their deals, while substantial, occupied familiar territory. What the $2 billion figure accomplished was structural. It announced, in terms no commercial landscape could misinterpret, that the center of gravity in women's tennis had shifted, that Southeast Asia, specifically the Philippine archipelago and its dispersed, passionate, globally distributed diaspora, represented a market of such depth and devotion that the right athlete commanding that market was worth more than the most decorated champions of the current era. The reality was already embedded in the data. Sponsorship income can surpass prize money dramatically when a player becomes simultaneously nationally iconic and globally marketable. Eala had achieved both conditions simultaneously, and at a pace that compressed what typically requires a decade of Grand Slam success into roughly 18 months of unprecedented breakthrough performances. ESPN's analysis of her trajectory captured the structural transformation precisely. Back in Miami for the 2026 edition, Eala is no longer chasing points. She's defending them. And in the WTA's rolling 52-week ranking system, that distinction is everything. She had crossed from challenger to established force, from wildcard to seeded mainstay, from discovery to institution. That transition and the speed at which it occurred was what the lifetime deal was actually valuing, not what she had accomplished, what those accomplishments revealed about what she would accomplish across the next 15, 20, 25 years. A corporation willing to commit $2 billion across a lifetime is not purchasing past results. It is purchasing a projection of continued, accelerating, compounding greatness. Eala herself had already rejected the premise that her value was contingent on any single result. Miami last year was a beautiful time for me, and it was the start of all of this. But since then, I've achieved a lot. I know that I belong here. Belonging, worth, permanence. These are the psychological foundations of exactly the kind of deal that was now attached to her name. And for every young girl in Cebu, in Davao, in Manila, watching a number with 12 zeros and understanding for the first time that the sport of tennis was not a distant European luxury, but a territory a Filipino woman could not only enter, but dominate commercially. The impact of this announcement extended far beyond the financial. It was permission. It was evidence. It was undeniable $2 billion proof that the ceiling they had been told existed was constructed from paper. Here is what the $2 billion deal cannot purchase and cannot contain: the ongoing story. Alex Eala is 20 years old. She achieved her career high ranking of world number 29 on March 16, 2026. She has won a WTA 125 title, reached a WTA 1000 semifinal, demolished multiple Grand Slam champions across consecutive seasons, and become the first Filipino to crack the world top 30. By every conventional athletic metric, she is in the early chapters of what will be a long, complex, richly contested career. The lifetime deal acknowledges precisely that reality. $2 billion is not a payment for what she has done. It is a wager on what she represents, philosophically, culturally, commercially, and athletically, across the entirety of time she has remaining. After departing Indian Wells following a defeat she characterized with characteristic composure, Eala offered these words: "I do leave with happiness. I think tomorrow I'll be a bit happier than I am now. I got to the 4th round of Indian Wells, and I'm really happy about that. I'm still proud of that. There will be a next time, for sure." There will be a next time. 4 words that carry the specific gravity of someone who has earned the right to say them without bravado. Someone who has been to the 4th round of Indian Wells, the semifinals of Miami, the tour-level final at Eastbourne. Someone who has stood across the net from Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, Madison Keys, and Jasmine Paolini and made them earn every single point. There will be a next time, and the $2 billion infrastructure now surrounding her existence exists to ensure that every next time is met with the resources, stability, and visibility that maximizes its impact on her ranking, on her platform, on her capacity to carry a nation's pride into stadiums across every continent on Earth. At Indian Wells, as Filipino fans flooded the stands of a California desert tournament that had never previously welcomed a player from their country, I think my experiences here in my matches have really meant a lot for me. I think I've been able to bring out a certain level and dig really deep in all circumstances. Digging deep in all circumstances. That is the 4-word summary of everything Alex Eala has ever done, and everything the people willing to attach $2 billion to her future believe she will continue doing in progressively larger arenas under progressively more intense scrutiny for progressively higher stakes. She is already the richest female athlete in Asian history. She is still, simultaneously, a 20-year-old at the beginning of a career with no visible ceiling. That combination, the commercial arrival and the athletic immaturity, is not a contradiction. It is the most compelling proposition in the history of Asian sport. The question that no analyst, no executive, no fact checker, and no fan has fully answered yet is, when the trophies eventually arrive, and they will arrive, what does Alex Eala become then? Drop your answer below, because this conversation is just beginning, and if you are not subscribed, you are already missing the next chapter. Subscribe right now, because the story of Alex Eala is the most important sports narrative of this generation, and we are covering every single moment of it.